Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bridger of Worlds podcast. I am your host, Ioannis Kokkinos. Thank you for tuning in. If you're on YouTube watching, if you're on any of the podcast platforms, thank you for tuning in as well. So today I want to dive into shadow work. I want to talk a little bit about what this concept means, what it means for human nature, how we can use it to obviously better ourselves and better understand ourselves. I mentioned shadow work in the previous episode, in the introduction episode, basically a Jungian concept, but the shadow, of course, has many different names through the ages, spiritual teachings, religions, schools of thought. It's the more hidden, rejected, denied part of us that is not to be ignored or further rejected or further denied, but actually to be used, to be faced, to be met, and to be witnessed, to fully come into selfhood. So there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the shadow and the way I've kind of understood it and the way I've obviously journeyed through my healing and how I've witnessed my shadow, what it means for the shadow to come up in relationships, relationship to ourselves, out in society when we're dealing with people, right? Like the shadow basically is a opportunity, an opportunity to better understand the patterns that we find ourselves to be facing when we are not being fully authentic and honest with ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we don't want to. It just means there's a hidden, very unconscious part of us that we don't really know why is kicking up, triggering, activating us, right? So when we're triggered, this is a very, very good indication that it's time to do some shadow work, whether we're triggered by a circumstance, but obviously, especially with another person. Because the shadow within ourselves that exists also exists in the individual. And the theory is, right, like the school of thought of Carl Jung is basically saying when we've denied this part of us, and it's obviously asking for our attention, hence why compulsions and addictions and vices manifest. When it's asking for our attention, it will actually pull in people and circumstances that will purposely trigger that part of us so that we can witness it. The shadow can be excruciatingly uncomfortable to face and to feel its feels. It's a part of us, but it's not all of us. The thing with shadow work is that we actually have to learn, ultimately, how to hold space for it. Holding space means to witness without judgment, which is difficult, right? We live in a society, we've grown up judging, especially as far as our religious teachings are concerned. We know what's good, we know what's bad, we know what's malevolent, we know what's benevolent. So this concept of witnessing without judgment when it comes to the shadow is extremely difficult, but very, very feasible, very doable as well. Because it's the shadow that holds our traumas, right? Like that trigger, that reaction, whatever it is, that's where our trauma is. That's where our wounding is. That's where we've suppressed the thing we don't want to feel or the thing we don't want to face. But that doesn't mean that it goes away. So when a person triggers us, when a situation triggers us, it's because that part of us wants to come to the surface. And it wants to come to the surface because it wants to be witnessed. Life wants and needs and demands to be witnessed. constantly. And life is everything, right? Like from thought to emotion to feeling to the external world to our internal world, it's all life. And life needs, wants, desires, demands to be witnessed. This is why we all have a need to be seen and to be heard. We want to be witnessed because when we're witnessed, we feel like we are a part of something. We feel like we are connected to the greater whole. Same thing when we're witnessing others, right? Like when others have a need to be seen and to be heard, we have the part of us that wants to be seen and heard, but then we have the part of us that actually just wants to witness. So then that's when the other person comes into play, is seen and is heard, and then we're the witnesses. Witnessing is such a crucial part of not only shadow work, but the spiritual journey. Because we're talking about the witness, which is the non-dual nature of our humanity. The shadow is very good with duality. The shadow, it's pained, it's traumatized, it's deemed as something very bad or hurtful or painful. So it puts something inside a box. The witness gets rid of that box through the non-dual, no judgment zone. So a little bit of a real life example. I mentioned that I moved through porn addiction for close to 15 years. By the time I started to heal or decided to heal from porn addiction, it's one thing to cut the porn. That's crucial step number one, the most important step, just like stop it, cut the porn. But all the feelings and thoughts and like the denied that remained there, because cutting the porn didn't mean all that went away. So there was a lot of shadow work involved post cutting the porn, because whatever feelings I had while watching or whatever feelings I had while like moving through life, it was happening in isolation. Nobody knew what I was going through. By doing shadow work and actually holding this space for these parts of me, because there was a lot of shame, there was a lot of guilt, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of confusion. So these emotions need to be witnessed. This is a part of the shadow work. No matter how much we want to resist, no matter how much we want to ignore them, no matter how much we want to escape. Porn was a form of escapism from a time in my life where I needed to feel escape. We'll leave that for another episode. But eventually coming to the point of learning how to hold space for these thoughts, these feelings, and all of the suppressed within me actually allowed me to learn more about love. Because it's the shadow that teaches us about love and unconditional love. And when we learn how to hold space, when we're the ones offering that kind of safety, it's like we're offering a safe space for ourselves. There's no greater way to practice self-love than this. There's a lot of talk about going to a spa, getting a nice massage, pampering yourself. That's all great. That's all awesome as far as like self-love is concerned. But self-love is a lot messier and can be a lot uglier than a spa day or a really solid massage. Self-love is offering that space within ourselves, offering our shadow, which is like we're all the ugly and we're all the messiest. Not really getting into story because we're the witness. So we just need to offer a space. We need to offer no judgment and just let ourselves feel. Let ourselves feel what we didn't let ourselves feel when it was time to feel something. We start to suppress, we start to reject and deny when like a feeling comes up, an emotion comes up, and we say, no, I can't feel this, or I can't emote this, I can't have this thought. So we deny, that's where the suppression starts. And then we look towards outer outer sources to further escape, because it's very hard to constantly suppress thought. It's very hard to constantly suppress emotion. It's like we need to almost kind of distract ourselves. So this is where the addictions come into play. I also do want to mention the difference between the unconscious and the subconscious mind. So I don't necessarily think they're synonyms, although they are very similar in nature. So because the shadow is an archetype, which is a symbol, it's another word for symbol, and because we all have a personal unconscious, this means that our shadow also comes into relationship with the collective unconscious. So all of this is Jungian, Carl Jung school of thought. The collective unconscious is the realm of symbols, symbolism, including deities, gods, goddesses, generational trauma, symbolism as well. Ancestral symbolism, what I mean there. The subconscious is more connected to our human ego. So obviously we know the subconscious is part of like the ANS system. It's like a lot of what we don't have conscious thought about what's going on within our bodies. That's like the subconscious mind at work. Apparently, it's also known that about 90% of the decisions we make stem from our subconscious mind. So obviously, like our patterning is there, you know, our conditioning and our programming is there. But the unconscious actually goes beyond our human ego. The unconscious is something we're all born from and into. The unconscious is not so much connected to the human ego, but connected to something much bigger than us, something I like to call destiny, purpose, our calling. The unconscious is synonymous with the Daemon of ancient Greece. Not demon, Demon, not demon, X. Daemon, Daemon. We're going to get into another episode about like the parallels of these two words, but basically the daemon, as far as Platonic school of thought is concerned, Plato being one of the ancient Greek philosophers, is the part of us that is also hidden, unseen, and unconscious within us. But it's not so much about the trauma holding and the pattern holding and the fear holding. It's actually the part of us that is very much connected to our life purpose. So it can get very confusing when we're conflicted within ourselves as far as emotions are concerned and impulses, right? All these instinctual reactions, instinctual decisions, spontaneous, anything. It can get quite confusing because it's all from the unconscious, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad, especially like if it's pertaining to the shadow. Because the shadow may shoot us off into addictions and compulsions and obsessions, yes. But this is where all the potential for healing is, for learning is, for growth is, for self-development is. So, yes, the shadow can feel extremely shitty, but it can also take us to incredible places. Now, the unconscious or the daemon is the impulse and like the reactive instinctual states that is connected to our higher purpose, what we're actually here to do in life. And not just do, but learn. Because it's very, very, very much about learning in our lifetime. We're here to learn specific things. We are here to connect with each other. We're here to share what we learn with each other. We're here to love. We're here to open our hearts in the presence of trauma, in the presence of shame, in the presence of fear, in the presence of armoring up, in the presence of grief, in the presence of loss. Because loss happens. Loss has happened, is happening, and will always continue to happen. But that does not mean we shut down. We learn to love in spite and in light of all of these things. And this is where the unconscious comes into play, because this inner calling within ourselves is hidden and it wants to be made conscious. So when we're talking about the unconscious, we also have to talk about consciousness. And consciousness is not ego-based consciousness. It's hard because I'm speaking, but basically it's like uppercase C consciousness, not lowercase c consciousness. Uppercase C consciousness is that witness, is that higher mind, is the non-dual mind that witnesses the dual mind, which is lowercase c consciousness. We are conscious. I'm conscious right now. I'm alive. I have memories. I have visions. I have dreams for the future. I'm breathing. I'm conscious. You're conscious. You're listening to this. You're watching this. You're conscious. But higher consciousness is also witnessing, learning how to hold space without judgment. No judgment. No judgment. It's pure awareness. And that is directly linked and connected to the unconscious, because they are two sides of the same coin. They are two polarities that meet, the dual nature of things within the singular nature of things. The bridging of these two worlds. And the shadow holds the key to all of this, because the shadow is that part of us that judges, that denies, that rejects, that projects. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, when we meet someone that triggers us, that's a projection. We're seeing something we don't like in someone. It's not always like 100% of the time a projection, but most likely there's something there that's speaking to something within ourselves. So this is where I'm at as far as shadow work is concerned, and it's not something that is to be further denied or further rejected. No matter what you're thinking, no matter what you're feeling, it's coming from somewhere and it's valid, because it's a wound. The more it's, suppressed, the more creature-like it becomes. So it can manifest in a very in very nasty behavior. Of course, there's no excusing that. But the root of it is probably a small, innocent child that was pained at some point. And that's really how to see the shadow. A pained younger part of us doesn't necessarily mean it has to be from childhood. It could be adolescence. The younger we are, the more unconscious we are. So the younger we are, if there are pains there, that's very deep. That's very unconscious. Because there's no actual memory of the wounding, right? We don't even have memory of being wounded, but our body stored it. The body stores everything. Even from our time inside our mother's womb, our body starts to store memory, right? That's cellular memory. Our cells start to form in our mother's womb. And then, as I mentioned before, DNA, genetic information, what gets passed on, what are the patterns of our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, our great-great-great-grandparents, and so on and so forth. What gets passed on? So, as you can see, it's a fucking blast. No, but it's truly liberating. It's truly worthwhile work when you really know how to just kind of move and maneuver through shadow, like through the shadow when the shadow is triggered. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it here. I think I mean, I know there's more to say, but I'm gonna leave it here because that's enough food for thought for sure. If you enjoyed this video, if you're on YouTube, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing. I will be back next week. If you are listening from a podcasting platform, thank you for tuning in as well. I will be back next week. I really hope this served you in any way. I'm always available to connect. I'm on Instagram. Please find me with my name. I do have some other things cooking at the moment, so I will be making those announcements when the time is right. And yeah, let's stay connected. So I'll see you again next week. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, please remember that you are the medicine and I'm just the messenger. Take care.